First off, I want to thank you guys all for coming out tonight, and thank Les Central for hosting. It was something that kind of came up out of the blue, and I've been delighted. I've been really excited about Montreal and kind of stomping around the city. I want to kind of give a little bit of a timeline about the development of my career and my work, because it kind of it followed my paintings and drawings, follow my research. After I graduated with an MFA back in 2005 at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, I got this amazing opportunity to show with an artist, Jim Denby, at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. And at that time in my research, I was interested in objects and storytelling, and how we put stories onto objects, how objects are like surrogates for storytelling. So then getting this big exhibition full of objects, this museum is full of all these different types, it's an ethnographic collection. So it has a number of different objects that are, geared for like the Americas or Africa. They have the collections kind of partitioned out. One of the things that I thought was very interesting about this first exhibition is I saw a trajectory of my career that I was going to be showing in museums. And museums are colonial entities. If you think of museum history, where they come from in Victorian era England, how you collect objects from different people that you're colonizing, so you can tell the stories of those objects. And that's a very powerful position to be in for museums, and how often this is perpetuated. So I was thinking about my career and how if I'm going to start working with museums and with presentation, that's a great platform to talk about museums and what they've done. So I started working on a number of pieces that are similar to this, but single panel, where I take museum objects and talk about the museum as this great cannibal monster that consumes cultures, consumes different people from all over the world, and how they make it part of its own body, its own story, and how cannibalism is a metaphor for assimilation and appropriation and dominance. So that comes up again and again. I use film titles and landscape to kind of talk about how objects travel across shores and across landscapes, and how different cultures interact. I also see waterways as being historically conduits of trade. They are the ancient highways of the planet. That's how we move stuff, how we know stuff about each other traditionally. This piece, Ink Babel, was probably of my career the piece that took me the longest to produce. Thinking about film and storytelling and narrative, I was thinking about if you were to take a strip of cinema film and you have a pan shot on it, you would see objects kind of tick across it. But each column would be a single landscape on cinema film. Even though each cell, it seems like a separate landscape, it all becomes one. But what if you were to take that idea of cinema film and push it out in two directions? You would have a panorama in one direction and a panorama in another direction, a pan shot in one direction and a panorama for still photography. So you could actually take film and put it in two directions in 2D form. So my Infinity page, that's like maybe like a zoom shot. I have pan shots. I have things slowly ticking. It's slightly transforming. This is like the Santorini, the Nina Pinta, moving the scrying stone, which is a piece of obsidian used in South America for divination. So this piece, I was originally going to have 4 towers, and it was almost each tower was going to be the historical elements of like fire, water, air, and earth. And so like the earth tower would be, like maybe a citadel. The air tower would be maybe an electric tower or foam tower. So I worked in a number of different towers, water towers, and various objects that kind of have this idea where you would get this idea of storytelling moving across the landscape immediately. Also, when you think of the Western genre films, the landscape is a character. You always have to have that saga, like vista, as part of the storytelling of that. So So I like the idea of like the seascape just kind of feeding into my own idea. Also, I feel like the seascape with these jutty rocks and mountains is being kind of like this mouth that is chewing on the Earth's narratives and cultures that get stuck on a place. And if you follow like the helicopter, it lands and takes off. There's little things little pieces in it that I hope people, kind of pick up on after analyzing it for a while. The 4 panel pieces are part of the Vor series, and I've done maybe about 20 of them. If they're all kind of designed where you could hang them continuously and you have a similar landscape. And I use various objects that have different identity, like they refer to like the lens of how you would see an object. Would you see an object as being masculine or feminine? Would you see an object as, what kind of cultural identity do you put on objects? And I became really interested in objects that capture information, like cameras and such come up again in my work. These are all titles like Eaten Alive, Cannibal Ferox, Apocalypse Domini, Cannibal, Holocaust. I did a number from the cannibal genre films from the 80s. And this is part of the Vor series that I've done.
Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that genre. Could you say something about what that is? I don't know what that
In
is.
the 1970s and 80s, a number of filmmakers out of Italy started making they're all pretty much the same movie, where you have a colonial entity. So it would be like an oil prospector, a cult leader, a religious leader, and some of them you would have like anthropologists come into an area, either Africa, South America, or Indonesia, someplace, the tricontinental peoples, and they would do something horrible, and they were all revenge films. So at the end of them, usually the natives would eat and massacre this foreign entity. But I mean, that's propaganda. It's playing off of these fantasies of consuming the other. And I like using the idea of cannibalism as it relates to power. Whoever is eating the other has the power. So this relates back to things like the Brazilian modernists used it. In my own culture, because I'm part Ojibwe and Anishinaabe, we have this concept of the Wendigo, who misidentifies those he consumes, but he's a winter cannibal monster.
What's the word? What's his name?
The Wendigo?
The Wendigo.
And so I mean, it kind of comes out of my own research too and storytelling. And so I like that. I like that as a metaphor for eating the other and what that means power-wise. But how a lot of scholars relate the Wendigo to colonization in North America is more like Christopher Columbus and other cannibals, or people like the colonizer is the cannibal, whereas in Brazil and South America, it's more the indigenous consumed or ate Europe, and it was part of their appropriation, and they had the power. So it's totally on its head in South America from my perspective, but still really a really powerful metaphor that I'm trying to use. So storytelling comes up again and again. Ink Babel, when you think of people being able to understand each other. Sunshine and the Cannibal has that as well. You can kind of see the cultural appropriation and the kind of mishmash of various objects and ideas. Any questions?